Hi, in this section, we'll be looking into data modeling in detail. But before that, we'll be covering an important way of interacting with Spanner, which is through the use of client libraries. By the end of this section, we would have gone through various aspects of schema design, and we'll use the Python client library to create instance, databases, and working with the data inside the database. So, in this particular video, we will be focusing on client libraries. Cloud Spanner client libraries are built on gRPC and are available in multiple languages like Python, Java, PHP, etc. It's a very useful way to access and perform multiple operations in Spanner when we are building our applications that use Spanner as a database. We can thus interact with Spanner using Spanner APIs by making use of the client library code. However, before we are able to access Spanner through a client library, there are certain prerequisites that must be performed, which include installing the Google Software Development Kit. And if you guys remember, we did install Google SDK in our section 1, so you can go back and review that if you're working with client libraries. The next step is to set up a Python development environment in our case, since we will be using Python as a language to access Spanner. So now let's follow the steps to set up a Python development environment. Okay, so first of all, we need to ensure that we have the Python 2 or 3 version installed. So since I have it installed in my system, I'll simply be checking Python version using this command, and I can see that I have Python 365 installed. You can also check if my pip is up to date, which it is. Now, after ensuring that I do have Python and pip installed, the next tool which I need to have installed is Virtual Env tool. This is used to create isolated Python environments. These isolated Python environments can have their own versions of Python packages, which allows you to isolate your project dependencies from the dependencies of other projects. But before we can develop in a local virtual environment, we need to install Virtual Env globally. I already have Virtual Env installed, however, I can use this command for installation. So it's telling me the requirement already is satisfied. However, you can actually install it. So I simply modify the command to upgrade Virtual Env, and I can see that my virtual environment tool is already up to date. So after you install Virtual Env, you can create a virtual environment in your project. You can use the Python flag to tell Virtual Env which Python version to use. But since I only have one version of Python, Python 365 installed, so even if I skip Python version, it's okay. So Virtual Env Python 3, I'm telling it to clone the Python 3 in my env folder. However, if I don't delete that, I will just use the Python version, the only Python version which is installed in my computer, which is already Python 3. So now we can see that we have a virtual environment setup. If I just see, I can see that I have the env folder over here. So by the use of this command, Virtual Env has created a virtual copy of the entire Python installation in the env folder. After the copy is created, you'll need to activate the virtual environment. And activating the virtual environment tells your shell to use the virtual env pods for Python. So I'll use this command to activate my virtual environment. You can see that there's this tag which shows that the virtual environment has been activated. Now you can install your packages in this virtual environment and be confident that they won't affect other projects or your global Python installation. Okay, so I've just entered tab and I've again activated the virtual environment. If I want to deactivate the virtual environment and return to my global Python version, I can simply use the deactivate command, but I won't be using it now. We have done all the prerequisites for using the Python client library. So the two prerequisites were setting up Google Software Development Kit, Google SDK. So we had installed it and we had initialized it back in section 1. And the second prereq was setting up a Python development environment, which we have done so, and activated the virtual environment. So now I'll be installing Python client library for Google Cloud Spanner. So now I can see that in installing the Google Cloud Spanner client library, and now we're done with it. Now before we're able to run the client library, we must first set up authentication by creating a service account and setting up an environment variable. To set up authentication, we can go to the Google Console service account page and set up a service account. I'll simply be going there, and here it gives me an option to create a service account key. So I can click on the new service account, and the name which I'll be setting up, let's say I choose it to be Service Python. The role I'll be selecting is that of the project owner so that the service account is able to access all the details in my project. Here is the key type. The JSON is the recommended type where if I select it and create a service account, will download a file that contains the private key. So I can simply click create on it and it will download a JSON file which will have my service account key file. However, I'll be showing you another method to create a service account and generate the key, and that is using the gcloud. So that's why I'll not be downloading the key from here. Okay, so now I'll get back to my CLI and I'll show you how to create a service account using gcloud. So I'll simply be using the gcloud service account command, and I'll be creating a service account by the name of Service Python. So we waited for a while and it has created the service account. So in the next step, I'll be setting up an IAM policy for the project where I'll be giving the owner role to the service account so that the service account is able to, modify and make certain changes in the project itself. So for that, you can see that I'm using the add IAM policy binding command, which we did use while we were going through our IAM policies in the previous section. So we are familiar with it already. So as you can see that in the command, I've given the name of my project, which is Constant Wonder 224208, and the service account which I'm setting up. The name of the service account has a certain particular format where we have service python at project id and .gserviceaccount.com, .iam.gserviceaccount.com. So I assign it the role of the owner, and I'll simply click enter and wait for the command to return a value. So here we can see that a policy binding has been created. So it's visible that the owner role has been assigned to this particular service account, and this is the result of our IAM policy binding. Now in the next step, we will actually generate the key, the JSON file, which will have the key for authentication of our service account. So for that, I'll be using this command, the gcloud IAM service account, and I'll be generating a key. So for creating the key, I'll need to give the file name, which I set it as keyfile.json. So once my key is downloaded, I'll be able to see that it is over there keyfile.json. So in the command, you see that I'm giving my service account as the IAM account, which I'll be authenticating using this key. And once I click enter, I'll be able to see that my key file has been generated. So this has created key of type JSON as keyfile.json. If I check in my folder, I'll be able to see that indeed a file keyfile.json in my folder, which I'll be using to authenticate my service account. Okay, so now in the final step, I'll check my current working directory. because I know that my keyfile.json is located in this working directory. And I'll set my Google application credentials environment variable to point towards this particular file so that I can use it to authenticate my service account later, when I'll be using this service account to actually access Spanner through my client library. So that is all for now.